All right, everybody, welcome to Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard, our second episode in 2 days. We previewed round one of the NFL draft, and we pointed to Abdul Carter and Jaxson Dart to a potential aggressive trade up by the Giants. Joe Schoen able to wait and not trade over the Pittsburgh Steelers, who pass on a quarterback, and get Jaxson Dart in addition to Abdul Carter at 3. So a big night for the Giants. They land 2 players, the Penn State edge rusher, Abdul Carter, consensus best player on the board among a lot of people and evaluators in the NFL. And then at a premium position as well. You know, in my mind, you can make an argument that the Giants could use Will Campbell, who went the next pick, an offensive lineman to the New England Patriots, more than they need the edge rusher Carter position-wise on their team. But if you have a high grade on a pass rusher, teams typically go that route. Carter is exciting. He changed positions for his final season at Penn State. And so he is relatively new to the defensive end position, coming off of off-ball linebacker for the Nittany Lions. And so there's some thought of only scratching the surface for a player who already has exciting production and traits, and somebody that Shane Bowen and the Giants defensive staff can get their hands on and really believe he can be something special, teamed with the rest of the defensive line, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau, who the Giants picked up his 5th-year option last night. Joe Schoen announced it during the draft. Don't know why they just didn't do it earlier, but announced it and took a shot at the haters who thought that they might not do it. So, of course, always with their rabbit ears up. But the biggest news of the night, of course, despite Carter being huge news as the number 3 pick, was the Giants trade up for Jaxson Dart. I broke the news on X, on my account, P. Leonard NYDN. Hopefully you follow me. If not, go follow now. You know, there are different times where you can break news in different ways. Ideally, for example, as we build this YouTube channel here on Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard, PL on NFL is the handle here. Subscribe now if you don't already. But ideally, maybe you can record a quick video and post it, and you can, let's say, serve the YouTube community before you're going to the X and Twitter community and blasting it into the world. But you guys know how the draft works. It's minute to minute. It's second to second. You never know how long you're going to have something alone. And so last night, I received information that the Giants were trading up with the Houston Texans and that they were giving up 3 assets to do it. So the final trade that the Giants made for Jaxson Dart included the number 34 overall pick in the second round, at the top of the second round, the number 99 pick in the third round that they acquired as a compensatory selection for losing Xavier McKinney, and a future third round pick in exchange for Jaxson Dart, the Rebels quarterback, 3 years at Ole Miss, and transferred from USC in 2022, ends up at Ole Miss, has an explosive season as a senior, first team all SEC, a guy who connected very strongly with Brian Daboll throughout the process. In fact, all of my reporting initially about Daboll and the Giants doing early work on Jaxson Dart, from a top 30 visit to a deep dive. I hate that term. I don't know why I just used it. A huge contingent going down to Ole Miss early on in the process, even before the pro day in mid-March. And it got to the point where Daboll and Dart were texting daily. And Dart actually joked that Daboll stopped sending those daily texts within 2 weeks out of the draft. So he didn't know exactly where he stood at that point. But obviously the Giants were trying to keep it quiet. It wasn't kept quiet. In fact, if you line up the timeline of Daboll stopping texting Jaxson Dart, it lines up with me publishing the story that the Giants liked him. So that's what's really funny. In fact, Jaxson Dart, so my story dropped on April 12th. That all lines up. And Dart actually, as he was about to talk to us last night after being selected, he said, "Hold on, this is coach." He got a call from Daboll. And he actually said that the first thing Daboll said is, "How did your first media go?" So he's already being trained well in the art of the New York media. But, some interesting background on the trade that I broke and that news. So the parameters of this deal could have looked a little bit differently. Joe Schoen felt like it was extremely important to him to protect the 65th overall pick in the third round, at the top of the third round. And then also he likes that fourth round pick at the top of the third round, the third pick of the fourth round. That's 105. Now, initially, there were parameters discussed where the Giants would have given up 34, 99, and 105 at the top of the fourth there. So they would have given up kind of back-to-back picks in that, late third, early fourth area. But Joe Schoen and the Giants preferred the fact that they could give up a higher draft pick, a third round pick next year, but have it be in a different draft. So essentially, you could argue, did the Giants actually, give up even more value there, of course, because let's say they have a season here where they win 3, 4, or 5 games. The third round pick you're giving up, if it's next year's third round pick, could be a very high pick in that draft and in that round. But Schoen and Dable in the position they are in, where they still want to attack this draft and get some pieces that can help them now. You look at now they still have a third, they still have a pick in the high fourth, and they have a fifth and 2 sevenths remaining. So that was their decision. Their decision was let's try to take the fourth round pick out of this and retain that. So we're not just emptying the vault here. And in exchange, we'll give them what could end up being a higher selection and more value. It is going to be more value in the third round, but could end up being a lot more value next season. But that was their decision. That's how they decided to go for it. And Houston obviously accepted that deal. Now, Joe Schoen said that the Giants didn't really start working on moving up until 22 with the Chargers. So you had the Chargers, the Packers, the Vikings, the Texans, all in that area. The Chargers and the Packers both took those calls, but ultimately ended up staying and making those picks. There was a report by ESPN leading into the NFL draft that that Joe Schoen throughout the spring. Now, we all knew, I had reported, others have reported, we all knew that Joe Schoen had heavily and aggressively pursued Cam Ward and a trade at number 1 overall with the Tennessee Titans that the Titans did not accept. They end up taking the Miami quarterback anyway. Giants were not the only team pursuing that. You had the Saints in play, you had the Browns in play, but they were described as the most aggressive team looking for it. And we all knew it had to include next year's first in order to charge up like that. But they put a number on it. Adam Schefter reported that the Giants offered their number 3 pick this year, next year's 1 and more in a package to go to number 1 and get Cam Ward, and Tennessee didn't accept it. So that means that the Giants now and Joe Schoen spent 2 straight drafts offering the future year's 1 to move up for a quarterback, and both times were told no. They tried to do it. They offered their number 6 pick last year, their number 47 pick in the second round, and they offered this year's 1, which ended up being 3rd overall pick. They offered all of that to New England last year to move up to 3 and take Drake May, and the Patriots said no. So this is back-to-back seasons. Joe Schoen offered a high first-round pick in the future for a quarterback and didn't get him. Now, that said, they ended up then pivoting and making an aggressive play for Dart. Now, of course, I'll get to your questions right now, but it obviously is intriguing that they took Jaxson Dart over Shedeur Sanders. I told you guys that Jaxson Dart was the guy over Shedeur, but that there was still love for Shedeur in the building. There was love for Shedeur in the building. Dable and Schoen being very careful to try to avoid addressing that topic. But Joe Schoen did say that that they had those conversations about what the quarterback draft board looked like and what their final evaluation and decision was all the way up until Monday evening. So as far as setting the board, the preferences, Schoen acknowledged in so many words that that this was not an easy decision, that there was a lot of deliberation, and that in the end, there was love for multiple players, that being Shedeur and Jaxson Dart, but Dart ends up being their guy completely. So Townsend checks in with a $2 super chat. Townsend, thanks so much. We have our diehard fans, in here. to break down the draft, to talk Giants. I want to hear what you guys think about how the Giants did, what you think of the assets they gave up, what you think of them passing on Dart versus Shador. Are you excited about the idea that they're saying they're going to redshirt Dart? Do you believe them? How do you feel this is going to kind of continue to build the team? Do you feel like they haven't done enough on offense and now they don't have enough ammo to do so? I want to hear what all of you guys have to say. Reminder, we are sponsored here, as you can see on your screen, by MyBookie Sportsbook. They roll out the red carpet for sports bettors all season long, all year long. You have NBA playoffs and NHL going, and MLB as well, NFL draft props too. So it's mybookie.ag. Use the promo code PATSPICKS. You'll get 50% match on your first deposit of $2,000 or more. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can pour it into your coffee, into your tea. It's great. It can help lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to start feeling the difference. Use the QR code or the Talking Ball 25 code. Get 25% off your first order on Subscribe and Save. Also, Estate 98 Coffee. Go to estate98.com/Talking Ball for an exclusive offer on an all-natural specialty coffee concentrate. And brought to you here by Sal Loretta for Men, luxury menswear and tailoring in Midland Park, New Jersey. All right, let's get into the queue because you guys are kind enough to join me here on Friday morning. Really exciting that it resulted this way. And frankly, proud to have broken the news of the Dart trade, both the terms of the trade and then the selection of the trade. Joe Judge was there in Utah with Jaxson Dart and his family and friends. While the pick was made, they had a draft party in Utah. And so the former Giants head coach in the room as the Giants select their future franchise quarterback in Jaxson Dart, gets to celebrate with family and friends. And then as I sit here with you now, Jaxson Dart and family, they are scheduled to fly this morning here to New Jersey. And the expectation is that both Abdul Carter and Jaxson Dart will be meeting us, the media, here in New Jersey this afternoon, and we'll get to meet them in person. So looking forward to that. Mike says there is hope, still a long way to go. Jacob says, let's go. Jacob tells everybody, for everyone tuning in, Pat Leonard is a daily columnist for the New York Daily News. He does these live chats to give updates and answer fan questions and give insight. If you want a question answered immediately, you can purchase a super chat to contribute to the channel while getting your question and opinion highlighted. So Pat answers it first. This is not mandatory. If you just want to ask a question, Pat will try to get to your question in the queue. Thank you so much, Jacob, for that. Hunter says, good morning. Perfect day one, in my opinion. Dart can sit and develop, and Carter is self-explanatory. No Mets, no Jets. Good to see you. Savage Steve says, I really don't have a problem with Dart. If that's your guy, go get him. And trading back in is not a bad thing to have the 5th year option. Right. And also, Steve, all good points there. The other thing is, the Rams, the Browns, the Saints, there were teams lurking. There were other teams interested. The Browns were a serious threat for Jaxson Dart. The Saints were a serious threat for Jaxson Dart. Different takes on how strong the Rams' interest was. I mean, I know there was some love for him there, but was there no love for him in round 1 in the end? Did it prove that the Rams really were more focused on acquiring more assets, on getting more players in this draft? They end up trading back and out of the first round and acquiring an extra first-round pick for next year. So less need, always ahead of the curve. But in the end, the Giants get their guy. Jacob says, Pat, you said morning drive. I expected you driving. Well, I said we ride at dawn. That was kind of like a movie quote. I didn't literally mean at 6 a.m. So I'm sorry about that, Jacob. Yeah, I wanted to go live last night. To be honest, guys, I'm not gonna lie. I was at the Giants facility yesterday and it was exciting. And like I said, it was exciting to break the news and be in the room. But I'll be totally honest with you. Like next year, I think I might go live for the entire draft round 1 and be somewhere else, because I think I would rather be with you all and be breaking the news here with you guys on the channel and providing value that way to you, the subscribers and my most loyal followers, and also engaging in that way while still working the phones and still checking out the board and all of that. So this could be the last year I don't go live on round one of the draft because that was a lot of fun. Let's see. Townsend says, where do you see the Giants taking an O lineman, and do you see them taking a guard or tackle? Yeah, Townsend, I've been texting people this morning trying to figure out who the target is. I mean, obviously, without a second rounder now, they're a little ways away from getting, their guy and having control of who they're landing there. I do think the expectation, though, Townsend, is that they would draft a guard. I don't hate the idea of, like, that's why I mentioned Will Campbell earlier. Getting a player who has tackle, guard, flex, but has a reliability at one spot, and maybe you see what you can work with there. I'm still trying to nail down exactly who their primary targets are. And hopefully, my hope is actually, because I'm working the phones as I talk to you guys, my hope is I can get some names to you before we're up here on who to watch in round 3 when the Giants' next pick comes up. But definitely, from a standpoint of need, the Giants, the Giants need, the greater need at the moment is at guard. So, take that for what it's worth. Let's see. Antonio, what's up? Yeah, any targets at 65 today? Yeah, so here's what I'll say about targets at 65. Going into this draft, like I talked to somebody yesterday who stressed. Now, listen, we all know and knew that Abdul Carter was, a possibility at 3. And based on his evaluation and the premium of the position, even though the Giants needed to do work on their offense in this draft, that it was going to come down to, they still might go defense there because of the positional value, Abdul Carter, the player, all that kind of stuff. But I was told yesterday that the Giants were going to try to attack the offense in this draft after spending most of their assets and time in free agency on the defense. So I think at a base level, you should be looking at them aiming at a guard and a running back coming down the pike at the very least. That would be my expectation. So those are the positions I'm looking at. So, on the board, I mean, as far as 65, who's going to be available? I mean, you have guards. Again, I'm not reporting any interest here in these guys, but, Tate Ratledge from Georgia, Travion Henderson for Ohio State, though I guess imagine he will probably go higher. Those are players who are not drafted yet. But again, because we're starting at 33 today and the Giants are at 65, who is actually going to be there when you end up picking? But, going on some of on the boards, Miles Frazier from LSU, in this range of remaining guards on the board as well. But, going to try to get more specific names and report some interest and aim at who exactly they're targeting for you guys. So as we're live here, we'll continue to go through that. So stick with me. Jacob says, Pat was trying to break stuff yesterday. He was covering his mouth. I thought he was suffocating for a good second. Yeah. So to be totally honest with you guys, the phone call I had during the live chat yesterday helped set the table for me breaking the news on the trade up during the draft. And that was what I was saying. Like, some people on the chat were joking, Pat just wants us to think he's working the phones. It's probably his mom checking in and saying hi. But I promise, time was valuable yesterday. And if that was somebody who didn't have information for me, I'd been like, hey, Mom, sorry, I got to call you back, And so, that was somebody reiterating the Giants' desire to move into the first round, stressing that it might take them being a little bit aggressive. There really was uncertainty about the Steelers. There was a chance that they were going to take him. There was a split in the Steelers building on Shador and Jaxson Dart. They end up not taking either. They get the D tackle from Oregon, a player I really like. But, the Giants and Joe Shane were able to read the room and also, clearly from a price standpoint, even though he had offered next year's one to go up for Cam Ward, from a price standpoint, they were clearly waiting on spending to a certain level, but not over it as well. So they targeted the area they ended up coming into. They were able to come up to 25 with Houston. Houston, one of those teams, like several teams who ended up moving back. And we said this before the draft. There were teams in that back half of the first round that they just didn't have first round grades on players there. And so if they could get meaningful return to move back, then that was worth it to them. Right. And so that's how you end up finding a trade partner. D Pat says, when you all asked if he was going to trade up for a quarterback after they picked Carter, he started pounding the table a lot. That's his poker tell. You are welcome, Pat. That's funny. Well, D, I'll say this. He was so calm in the press conference after taking Carter. It was very clear. Now, this happens with these, when teams are aiming for trades up and that kind of thing, it is common, and you do lay the groundwork prior to draft night for that potential scenario. So that's normal. But it was very clear to me walking out of the press conference after they selected Abdul Carter that Shane was confident about the fact that he had a trade in place that was going to get him his guy. That was very clear to me at that point. So you're on it, D-Pat. I'll look for that pound the table thing. All right, let's see. Oh, Tino says, why do you think so many teams had Dart over Sanders? Two reasons that were mentioned to me through the process. The first, so there's the off-field, character evaluation of every prospect, right? Is this guy a leader? Is he coachable? That type of thing. That was an issue for some teams or some people on teams. Like, for example, there were the Giants who had a lot of love for Shedeur. I talked to some people with the Giants about Shedeur who said, not concerned about that. If he's the Giants quarterback, he'll handle it well. He won't be a distraction. That's overblown. He's coachable, is all those things. But there were some reservations and discomfort and people who had to be sold and weren't fully sold, right? I mean, think of it this way. Joe Shane basically saw Shedeur play 1 million times, went to his practices at Colorado. He saw Jaxson Dart play 1 time last year. And that was all the way back on Thanksgiving weekend, right before the road scouting process basically ended for the fall. And so you think of the amount of time the Giants spent on Shedeur versus Jaxson Dart in the fall and then end up taking Dart over him. Super interesting. But when I mentioned the off-field, let's say, character, did he have a good interview, a bad interview to other people in the league? One thing that a couple people said to me was, they said, well, here's the thing, though. He had a pro day in Colorado where he wasn't making the deep out throws in an impressive way. He wasn't putting zip on it. The ball was wobbling. Like, that's the money throw in those workouts, those deep outs. And Shedeur, frankly, in that workout looked nervous early. The ball was wobbling, and he wasn't pushing the ball on some of the throws that the NFL evaluators wanted to see. And so as it was described to me, it was like, you could say all you want about whether you like the kid, you don't like the kid, whatever. It kind of came down to some people to, Jaxson Dart pushes the ball down the field. Brian Daboll said it yesterday. They feel like he keeps his eyes downfield. He makes those deep throws. He can make the intermediate throws. He has a strong arm. He also has running ability. So it was a combination of his arm, some of those deep throws, those deep outs, those deep posts, and then combined with the mobility, but also the connection that the coach and the quarterback had. And ultimately, Joe Shane deciding that was his guy as well, despite the fact that throughout the process, he loved Shedeur. Let's see. Novice says McShay had Shedeur. McShay said Shedeur did not learn the install package and was unprepared for his workout, and Daboll called him out on it, and there was a back and forth. Did you hear similar? I did not hear that. When did Todd say that? Did he say that last night during the draft? Can you give me the timestamp of that and like the link to where he said that? Because no, I did not hear that. Wow. So this is something, and again, exciting night for the Giants, but this is going to be a really interesting story to follow, concurrent and simultaneous and alongside and parallel to the Giants draft and Jaxson Dart's assimilation and development, the story of Shedeur Sanders not being picked by the Giants and staying on the board and the reasons why not after that scouting process, this is fascinating. Novice, thank you so much for saying that. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. But please tell me in the chat where Todd said that, because no, I was not told that directly. I did not know that. Let's see. Excuse me. All right, let's see. Man, you guys are awesome. We got 110 and climbing on a Friday morning at 9:30. The vibe. Can I say this for the first time in a while? Even though, listen, this still might be a tough Giant season. You know, who knows how it's going to work out? But can I say for the first time in a while, at least, even if it's fleeting, that the vibes are high in Giants land? Are the vibes high? Vibes are pretty high, right? All right. Blaze says some Shedeur enthusiasts are expressing dissatisfaction, arguing the Giants should have selected him over Dart. Shedeur is being viewed as a version 2.0 of Daniel Jones, with former Giants head coach Pat Shurmur even drawing parallels between the two. Yeah, well, also Jaxson Dart drew a comparison to Daniel Jones last night. Joe Shane was telling us that Dart needs to learn not to try to run people over as a quarterback. He said he ran over a linebacker in the Senior Bowl, and they got to teach him not to do that. And as Shane's saying that, I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, you know who that sounds like, right? So, yeah. So we go from Danny Dimes to Mr. Dart. So we go from Dimes to Dart. Pat, any idea that Shane did this to jump the Rams? Yeah, that was my read on it. I mean, again, like I said, there's some split on what the Rams were actually going to end up doing there. There's some people who think they were lying in the weeds and were going to take him. There are other people who thought that in the end that was not going to be the case. I know there was love for him in their building. That is true. But as far as they were definitely going to take him, but I do think the Giants aimed to get over the Rams, and that was a target. It was like the Steelers, then the Rams, and then the Browns ahead of the Giants. Strider says, Pat, not okay with the Dart pick, praying that it works out. I wonder if the Rams were thinking about him and could learn under Stafford, but traded once we took Dart. Hope it works out. Kyler says, do you see a chance Dart starts some point in time this year? I know they say they want to sit him, but first-round quarterbacks usually play. Give him a head start. Dart Vader, New Sac City. I like Dart Vader. That's good. I love it, Kyler. Dart Vader. Yes. I need that shirt. So I said this yesterday before they picked the quarterback, and I say this every year. When teams draft quarterbacks in the first round, the quarterback plays. Now, how early will Jaxson Dart play? I don't know. I do think, based on Russell Wilson having a wins clause in his contract, $3 million worth of incentives of wins and play time in those wins, 50% or more, with Jameis Winston on deck. I do think the Giants have set it up that the plan is not to play Jaxson Dart right away and to assimilate him in that regard. But listen, the Atlanta Falcons played Michael Penix Jr. in a year after they signed Kirk Cousins to a bazillion-dollar deal. Granted, Cousins, it gets down later in the year. He's a little bit banged up. He's not playing well, whatever. Whatever the reason is, though, just go look, and I'll be doing a story on the Daily News about this. Go look at the history and the recent history of quarterbacks who get taken in the first round. They just all end up playing in their rookie year in some way, whether it's early, whether it's late, whether it's right away, whether it's because the starter got hurt or the starter struggled or the team struggled or whatever it is. And remember this too. If the Giants are having a tough season this year, which it's going to be tough for them to have a great season this year with the schedule, with the roster, all those things. If they have a tough season, then the only hope for offering a sliver of hope to ownership will be that the quarterback looks good. Now, conversely, you could also say that they just drafted a QB that they're saying is going to take some time to develop and that they want to give some time. So with the Giants also looking like they could go the Jerry Jones route possibly and run out the clock on the contract to save some money and not pay two regimes at once, you could ask the question, does this buy, after retaining Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll after a 3-14 season, which was absolutely ludicrous, does this buy Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen through year 5 at least and the full contract? Because are you really drafting Jaxson Dart because he and Daboll get along so well and Daboll's such a huge part of that evaluation, and then firing everybody after the first season? Is that really what you're doing? Now, then again, how many years are you going to have a horrendous team? So, where's that balance? I mean, one thing is for sure, stick with me, because Joe Schoen was saying there's no mandate to take a quarterback. I'm not going to be forced to take a quarterback, all this stuff. I told you, despite those comments and despite the fact that he does have a line where he won't just take any QB to take one, that he felt the pressure to take a quarterback, and he was going to, and Jaxson Dart was the leading contender, and he was. Simeon says the trade reeks of desperation. I don't mind passing on Sanders, but I can't be convinced Dart would not be there at 34 without having to trade up. The trade reeks of desperation. They are desperate. Now the question really is now, is Dart good? Right? As far as, like, what I mean is, Simeon, I know that seems obvious, but my point is, just like all these other quarterback picks, it's like when a team takes a swing at a guy, like, I can't sit here and tell you Dart's going to be great or that he's not going to be good. I'm not going to tell you that. I can tell you what evaluators say. There's the pluses and minuses, but in the end, to your point, it is a desperate move. Joe Schoen has been desperate. I mean, his trade for Brian Burns last year was desperate. So, they're in a desperate spot. But if the kid ends up being a good quarterback, it'll end up being a good move. And if he ends up not being a good quarterback, they'll be hiring a new GM and coach either next year or the year after. So, Vinny G-Men, what's up? G-Men says they picked Dart so that after the 5-6 win season, we're going to have to say they will go to Mara and say we need another few years to develop our quarterback. This was a job-saving pick. G-Men, very, very astute. And as we were just saying, there is some validity to saying, we can't just draft this guy because he connected with our current staff and offense and all that stuff and then just rip everything up from underneath him. But to your point, you can't be blind to, like, you have to have your eyes and ears and mind open to any possibility, whether it's sticking because this group gels together or pivoting because it doesn't. G-Man says, I didn't want Dart, but now that he's a Giant, I'll support him all the way. Good attitude. Hunter says, yep, that would be awesome. Jacob says, running back at 65. I think it's a possibility. O-line, running back are positions I'm looking at right now, working the phones right now with texts as we speak, to see what other people think they will be aiming at as far as specific players. If I don't have that information for you by the end of this, I don't know, maybe we'll do one later, or maybe I'll post like a YouTube short, get it to you guys. We'll see. But like I said, anything we don't talk about here, I don't report on here. Once we stop our live, make sure you're following me on X, P Leonard NYDN, and I'll drop some stuff there, or my Instagram, PL on NFL. Strider says, I didn't want Dart, but the Giants don't have to start him. He can sit and learn. I hope for the best. Still not happy. Steven says, a lot of DJ 2.0 and Eli 2.0 comments. What are your thoughts on him being worth trade up? It's worth it if he turns out to be good. When I wrote my story on Dart on April 12th. So let me give you what I had heard about him. Okay. So, and I'm on the verge of doing some calls and writing more about him here. So Jaxson Dart is viewed as a guy who has a lot of good traits. Okay. Like Greg Cosell, I had him on my podcast, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on Radio Row in New Orleans back in February. His quote about Dart was, there are things to like about Dart. He said he throws a pretty good ball. He probably is a better athlete than people give him credit for. His running will be a factor. He emphasized that. His ability to scramble and get first downs like that will be a factor. Overall traits, you wouldn't put him in that top category, he said. But if he's well coached, good scheme, people around him, he said there are very few transcendent quarterbacks in general. They need people around them. Like he was saying, most quarterbacks are not like Jaden Daniels was his point. He said, I think Dart can be a quality starter in this league, but I think he needs all those other things in place for that to happen. Now, one NFL scout I talked to said he saw Dart as a good backup. Like once he develops, that he'll end up being a good backup. Called him a gamer who is prone to mistakes. Then again, I talked to another who said before the draft, he thought he was going to end up being the Bo Nix of this draft. So again, to Greg Cosell's point, it's kind of like this is a player who, if he's in the right supporting cast with the right coach, he could quickly prove everybody wrong. Like Bo Nix went from this guy's not worth a first round pick in a lot of people's minds to being selected high and would have won was a top 3 rookie of the year finisher with Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers. And in most years would have been a rookie of the year, as the top quarterback, but Daniels was just so transcendent. So, NFL.com's Lance Zierlein, who does those awesome evaluations, his work said the NFL comparison was Gardner Minshew. He's physically put together. He's not slight. He's not extremely tall. He's listed as 6'2", 223 with 30-inch arms and 9.5-inch hands. Comes from Utah, as I said, Ole Miss, 3 years at Ole Miss, including this past season. First team All-SEC, set school records with 10,000 passing yards, 12,000 yards of total offense. Led all of college football last year with 10.8 yards per attempt and had 4,774 yards of total offense. So Gator Bowl MVP, beat Duke 404 yards and 4 touchdowns against Duke. All right, let's see. Oh, it looks like we got another super chat in the queue. So Novice says start at 2020 or 22:30 on McShay's live stream replay yesterday. All right, thank you, Novice. I appreciate that. Jay Faries, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, Pat, great work. I love the Boom Chaga. If the Giants draft top 3 in 2026, which is possible, does Jaxson take a quarterback off the board for us? Well, I mean, he better, from a standpoint of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's job security. I mean, he'd better because listen, this is a roster that still needs a lot of work. It's not like they were in a luxury spot to take a quarterback here. They took one because they needed one, but that's just one of the many things they need. So, I would say if they're drafting top 3 next year, there's going to be a new general manager and head coach, because that would mean they had like 2 or 3 wins again. And then, so Jay Faris, to your point, if that happens, then you bring in new GM and coach. Now it doesn't necessarily take a quarterback off your board because the new GM and coach didn't draft the guy who's in the building. That's another reason why, Jay Faris, this could end up helping Daboll and Schoen get to year 5. But your point is an interesting one that creates a messy situation because, like I said, to have a top 3 pick, you have to be dysfunctional and disastrous again. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Man, Giants fans are beaten down, but also realistic, right? Like realistic to the possibility that, despite the excitement of this night, that the Giants, if they aren't able to get off to the start they're looking for and win games, if they're put in that position, what does this all mean for the GM, the coach, the quarterback position? So all fair points and questions. And this is why I love this community here on Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard, sponsored by MyBookie Sportsbook, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men. All right, let's keep getting through the queue here. And then I have to jump off and make some phone calls and do some more work for the daily news, I should say, and reporting in general. Let's see. Blaze says Carter and Dart, who are both fans of Star Wars, might be eyeing a potential round 3 pick 1 target for the Giants who shares their love for the Star Wars franchise. Blaze, fill me in. Who is that? John says, good morning, Pat. I'm happy with last night, and I understand the Dart pick. Armchair Quarterback checks in with $50 from Canada. $50 Canadian. Armchair Quarterback. Thank you so much for that, man. Wow. Holy cow. See, this is you guys' contributions and engagement means everything to me. I don't take it lightly and really appreciate it. Support our sponsors as well. And thank you so much for supporting me and supporting this channel. Armchair. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see. Hold on. Let me answer one question. Just answering a text here. Excuse me. All right. So Strider says the offense Dart was in was a little different, but similar because his coach eliminated half the field for Dart and as a one read quarterback. Right now, we have time for Dart to develop. Dable said it's similar to the offense that he ran at Alabama. Of course, that was the Alabama offense he ran in which they won the national championship, but ended up benching a future Super Bowl MVP at halftime. Maybe the Rams gave up the pick after the Giants picked Dart because they wanted Dart. Yeah, right. We talked about that. Dart was to save their jobs, and bright side, they didn't give up next year's first-round pick, John says, even though they tried. Dart doesn't have to start right away. John says, in my eyes, Giants need to get a DT or a guard next pick and then address the running back or receiver position. I agree. Guard and defensive tackle positions, I want to see them hit, as well as expecting running back. Blaze says, will Trevor Etienne, the running back from Georgia, be obtainable at selection 35? Let's see. So, I mean, I would think so. At that position, yes. I would think at 65 he would be, but who knows? I mean, these guys, they get graded a certain way by different people, different teams, and different experts, and then teams just decide we like this player the most. We met with him. We like him. We like the evaluation, and they take him, much higher than people were expecting, right? Like you look at the first round of the NFL draft, and let's go over some of the other teams, initially here, just to give you my take on that, and I'll get back into the question queue. But what stood out to me in round 1, I'll just kind of go down the board. Obviously, Jacksonville trading up for Travis Hunter, a big deal. Cleveland Browns in a position where, I'm not quite sure it wasn't like, oh, we're desperately trying to trade out of 2, but, it was kind of one of those hauls where they're getting a future first, they're getting extra seconds in a draft where seconds are at a premium this year. And it was kind of like, we can still get a good player at 5. Let's just take this haul and move on. And so then they get Mason Graham, the standout under Wink Martindale last year at Michigan's defense, who, of course, was a wrecking ball in helping defeat Ohio State. So now he goes back to Ohio, plays for the Cleveland Browns. So that was an interesting one. Travis Hunter, interesting. James Gladstone and Liam Cohn. I mean, people have a lot of questions about what that program is going to look like down in Jacksonville. They obviously feel Hunter is special, but take a major swing and take a big chance right off the bat there. Admittedly interesting that as much as Abdul Carter was an exciting evaluation league-wide, that the Browns didn't take him. That the Browns did not view him as like a home run. We got to take this guy at 2 player. Obviously, that doesn't mean he's not a special player, but still interests me. Will Campbell, a good fit, an expected fit with the Patriots. Like I said, arguably the Giants need that position more than they did an edge with Carter, but you like the player, you take the player. Genty to the Raiders. Not a surprise based on the noise, but of course, interesting based on what the other needs they have. Membu by the Jets, I thought was a responsible pick, the tackle from Missouri. Tet McMillan from Carolina, interesting pick. Could, special talent and ability. And that was kind of a wild card pick with Dan Morgan and Dave Canales in the fold. Canales, obviously offensive coach. I like the Kelvin Banks pick by the Saints, the offensive tackle. Colston Loveland, Michigan, to the Bears. Interesting. I had heard the Bears were trying to get up for a pass rusher, maybe Abdul Carter. They end up sticking and making that pick. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of them continuing to hammer the offensive or defensive lines. The Cowboys made the responsible pick with Tyler Booker. You have teams like, the San Francisco 49ers, Mykel Williams on the edge. The Niners pass rush last year just wasn't what it had been. The Eagles became the team that was the pass rush that the Niners had been in recent years. And so, attacking their lines, no surprise that they drafted somebody on one of the fronts and that it was defense in the end. Kenneth Grant drafted higher than a lot of people expected, but not considered a reach either. Just no one had a direct read on the Dolphins. We're definitely going to go there, but 2 Michigan D linemen under Wink end up going in the top 13. We pegged the Colts for the tight end from the jump, Tyler Warren. And then, what stands out after that, Emeka Egbuka, receiver from from Ohio State, ends up going to the Bucks. I do like that pick. I love the Derek Harmon pick by the Steelers, even though they were expected to take a quarterback there. And interesting that the Broncos went defense, given how strong their defense already is. But, strength on strength is nothing wrong with that. In fact, sometimes that's the best way to go, especially best player on the board. Don't reach for an offensive player. Omarion Hampton from the Chargers. My first thought when the Chargers took the running back from North Carolina was that I'm going to draft him onto my fantasy team. And Packers finally take a wide receiver in the first round in Matthew Golden. Now, interesting. I had heard the Vikings were going to try to trade back. They end up sticking and taking Donovan Jackson. Back here, my favorite 2 picks are Malachi Starks by the Ravens, the safety out of Georgia. That is, in my opinion, the best fit pick of the first round. That is the pick that I loved when I saw it and thought, I can see it. I see exactly how it's going to look. I see how it's going to improve the team. I see how it's going to augment everything around him. I love that pick. And then I thought the Eagles, sliding up to 31 and getting Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, who also has pass rush ability, really good pick. You hate to see the rich get richer when it comes to the Chiefs getting Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State, or the Eagles getting Jahad Campbell, a linebacker from Alabama. Both of those guys with injury flags and concerns. And that's how they end up there. So, we'll see what they end up if they're, immediate big time contributors, or if they have to be acclimated and assimilated at a slower pace because of these injuries and rehabs, and where that falls on their timelines and how much they improve those teams right away. But the bottom line is both of those teams got really good players at 31 and 32, which is a little discouraging for the rest of the league. Let's see. Getting a text here. Excuse me. Like I said, trying to work the phones. So yeah, texting with a source right now. Let's see. Talking about what the Giants could be targeting in round 3. And so 2 guards that one of my sources likes in general, like in the second round, if they were there, would be Jonah Savanea from Arizona or Tate Ratledge from Georgia. Likes the fit of both of those guards with the Giants. And then I've mentioned this guy before, but Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. not a second round pick, but a guy that is nasty, and evaluators that I trust are very, very high on. So those are names to watch. All right, let's see. Jay says, Pat, at press conferences, when they say, I understand the question, is that some code? Is that some reporter code for great question? I am uncomfortable now. It can be that. It also can be, yes, I understand the question usually is I'm about to not answer it. That's what that means. That's like a way of trying to let you down easy when you stonewall it. Let's see. Armchair Quarterback says, part 2, coach to the best. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Armchair QB checking in with super chats here. Okay, Armchair. Looks like one of your super chats was followed by a question, maybe. So let me put it together here. Okay. He says, hey, buddy, question. Do we award Shane for this great night? Had it not been for Jacksonville, we never would have had Carter to build our now very strong defense. How can we know the defense will be coached to the best of their ability and we have to endure these guys, Dable and Shane? Got it. Armchair, thank you so much for these super chats. Wow. And Navis, I see yours too. I will check in there. So, Armchair, to answer your question about, let me get to it here. I lost it again. Just because it's not in the comment with the super chat. So sorry about that. Let me see. All right. Apologies. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Let me get to this. Man, I lost my place. Hold on. So yeah, as I'm looking, reminder, we are brought to you by MyBookie, Estate 98 Coffee, Boom Chaga, Mushroom, Super Drink, and Sal Loretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. The Giants land Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State, at number 3 overall. And then they land Jaxson Dart in a trade up to number 25 overall in the back half of the first round. They give up $34.99 and a future third. As I told you guys earlier, what the Giants initially had talked about in parameters wise was $34.99 and $105 in the fourth as a potential trade. Joe Shane, he wanted to protect $65 in the third, which he did, but also in that scenario, he preferred to give up a future third, so a higher pick in a new draft rather than giving up 105 in the fourth round this year. So, Rick, you said, do we award Shane for this? Basically Jacksonville helped them out to get Carter. Yeah, well, I'm also interested in the fact that, the Cleveland didn't want Carter there or wasn't going Carter there. So that's obviously something to keep in mind. I think it is overblown to an extent. Like when people say, oh, the Giants had a great night, right? When you have a top 3 pick, you're going to get a good player. And so it's the reward for having 3 wins. Now, that said, you can screw it up. I mean, like Kayvon Thibodeau at number 5 is still a let's wait and see thing. Evan Neal was not worth the number 7 overall pick and doesn't look like a great pick, just as examples. Plenty of teams have missed on high first rounders. So that does still happen, but you're expected to come out of this draft with at least one good player, out of this first round with at least one good player. I do think selecting the quarterback in the way that they did, yes, it is desperate. Also, it does address a need I think Joe Schoen put himself in the position after the way they handled Daniel Jones last year, where he had to give John Mara and Steve Tisch something to work with on that end and show them a proposed solution. Do we reward him for it? I think what we do is we recognize that he drafted 2 premium positions, and positional value wise, understanding that and sticking to his draft board, we give him credit for selecting players at 2 positions that, if they hit, are meaningful difference making players and picks. Like, for example, not that it's a low bar, but again, you go back to the Dave Gettleman Saquon Barkley pick. He took a great player. The premise of that pick was Eli still got it, and Saquon's going to help, turn us into a good offense and put us over the top. It was a luxury pick by a team that didn't have that luxury. So Joe Schoen made a mistake last year in misunderstanding positional value and when you should push it a little bit to understand a player's value and what it means off the field. It's well-rounded. Where is your team versus where it used to be, all those things. But you can end up picking a player at a position who doesn't meaningfully improve your team there because you misevaluated your own team and roster. And so, drafting an edge at 3 and drafting a quarterback at least recognizes, like, these are 2 premium positions where we need to get better and where we can address them with our higher draft capital. So I'd say in that sense. Now, as far as how does Carter develop, how can we trust them? I will say this. I will not put the pressure and the blame and point the finger now at Shane Bowen better figure this out on defense, because you can already see that's where that would go. And the offense was 31st in the league last year. So this is still about, the defense has to get better, but this is still about, can the Giants score points this year? Right. And that's what I think is still the wait and see part of all of this draft and of this team and of this build, along with many other things. So I hope that answers your question. And thank you so much for the explosive super chats. Really. I mean, I haven't been this excited since I got that text about the trade and broke the news last night. Let's see. All right, let me get back into the queue and try to rattle these off. Man, really grateful though to all of you, especially the super chatters. Novice says, "What's the MyBookie odds on Collins, the D tackle from Texas, at 65?" You see. So Alfred Collins, let's see if that's up on MyBookie. Let me jump on there really quickly. Yeah, so MyBookie is a fun site. There's a lot of different ways to play. They even have a way for you to create your own props. So, like, you could suggest that as a prop and get that on the board, even if they don't have it. That's what I'm thinking. That might be like too random of a prop to be there, but it doesn't mean they wouldn't put it up. Is my point. By the way, how about this? Last year I had all these NBA bets, or last night I had all these NBA bets I meant to make, and I like betting NBA, and especially in the playoffs. And the 3 bets I was going to make, the day got away from me. I was on the phone all afternoon, or I was on our live chat here. I was on with D-Kit and everybody on a space on Twitter. I did a serious radio hit and all that, and I had to get ready, go down to the facility, do work, pre-write my stories, all this stuff. And I just didn't put bets in because I was too rushed. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Of course, all 3 of my top bets last night hit. It was like Cat points, SGA and the Thunder, and the other one was Beasley, I think, from the Pistons. All right, let's see. NFL draft. Well, this is interesting. So team to draft player, Brown. So the Browns, based on MyBookie's odds, Browns are minus 525 to take Shedeur, and then everybody else is plus 550 or higher. So that's interesting. Let's see. And then NFL draft. Yeah, I think a lot of their props they had on like over-unders of guys to be selected were for the first round, I believe. So right now they're trying to get all the action going on Shedeur Sanders. And they also have a prop on what position will be the Mr. Irrelevant selection. That's cool. So don't don't have that one, novice, but that's a good question. Sometimes I get notifications as well from other bookmakers on random over unders. So if I receive one of those, I'll pass that along as well. Let's see. Here's one. Rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year odds after round one. Ashton Genty is the early favorite, followed by Cam Ward and Travis Hunter. Defensive rookie of the year award, Abdul Carter, 2-1 odds early on, followed by Travis Hunter at 5-1 and Jalen Walker at 7-1. Let's see. Interesting. Sportsbetting.ag, based on X data in the last week, tracking the top 10 bust predictions based on tweets. Oh my God. I'm not going to read all those names. That's just people tweeting about it. That's not actual information. All right. Let's see. You get some interesting emails, I'll tell you. All right. So John says, in my eyes, oh yeah, you said that right. DT or guard, I like that. And then running back or receiver, Trevor Etienne, a guy that Blaze likes. Candyman says, like I said before the draft, no quarterback was worth trading up for. That being said, if the Giants feel this is the quarterback that can eventually make them successful, I support the decision. He says, doesn't Mara have to keep them through 2026? That's a possibility, depending on what progress they show. It certainly does raise that as a possibility. Brett says they executed exactly what the largest percentage of fans preferred for them to do. They did a good job. Strider wants a running back in the third or fourth. Danny Duds says, called it. John Mara loves familiarity. Dart has ties to Eli. Huge reach, but what's sad is this is less of a reach than Daniel Jones was at 6. Barb says, A+ round 1. Brett says, good morning. Will the media turn against Dart because he's not Dwayne Haskins? Oh, I see. So you're comparing this to like when people wanted Haskins versus Jones and then didn't give Daniel much of a chance early on. And you're saying, is the same thing going to happen with Shedeur or Jaxson Dart? So Brett, I think it's just natural though. I don't think that's media. I think like it's just something that happens naturally when a team heavily scouts players at a certain position and they choose one over the other. And there's either split opinions on what they should have done. And also in this case, obviously it was one of those scenarios where there was love for Shedeur in the building. And also, like I said, they did so much more work. Oh, hold on. Got to take this call. All right, guys, that was a call that's going to help me with the story on Jaxson Dart today. So apologies, but I mean, we've gone for an hour, but I am going to have to jump out of here because I do have to take this call. There's people flying, there's people moving around the country, not all going to be available at the same time. So if anybody has another question they really want answered that I didn't get to yet, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker now to raise to the top of the queue. If not, no big deal. We will do this again. Let's see. Let's see. Jacob says it's the piano getting delivered, right? With the virtual background. I love it. That's awesome. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much, especially to armchair quarterback Rick. I love the armchair quarterback. Novice, Jay Faries, Tino, Townsend. Thank you so much, everybody who checked in, especially the super chatters. Reminder brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, Estate 98 Coffee, and Salaretta for Men. MyBookie's code is Pat's Picks. Go to mybookie.ag, use that code now, and get 50% match on your first deposit up to $2,000, as well as Boom Chaga, Talking Ball 25 at boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference, or the QR code here. And Estate 98 Coffee, estate98.com/talking ball, as well as Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey, luxury menswear and tailoring. I'm a fan says G-Man, first round, A+. Thanks, Pat. Guys, we're going to continue to do this throughout the draft process. I don't know. Maybe, got to see. Maybe I'll do one of these later rounds. Maybe we'll try out the live chat while the round is happening and do it that way. So, I'll keep you guys updated on how we're going to do this. Really excited to be back grinding these Talking Ball lives, and you guys make it tick. Thank you so much for the tip off as well on the McShay thing, Novice. Really appreciate that. Let me actually mark that down where I have to go and see that or hear that about Shedeur, because that's really, really interesting. And last but not least, I would close with this. What I would like the Giants to do is I would like them to draft an offensive guard, a defensive tackle, and I would expect them to draft a running back. So to round off, what are they looking for here on day 2? They have the 1 pick. Remember, they have that top of 4th round pick as well going into day 3, but they have 65 in the 3rd round, at the top of the 3rd round here on day 2. And Jackson Slater or Miles Frazier from LSU are 2 names to watch at offensive guard for the Giants at 65. Jackson Slater or Miles Frazier. Again, like I said, running back, D tackle. I did talk to somebody, though, recently going into the draft who said we're going to try to attack the offense in the draft if we can, after doing so much in free agency on the defense. And, of course, Abdul Carter was the pick at 3. So now you go quarterback. Now you have to help the offense of the here and now. So those are the 2 names that I'll stand by as we leave this chat at offensive guard if they pick a guard at 65. Really excited about this. Thank you so much for being here. Jake, you checked in late, but you said you're happy about getting Abdul Carter. You didn't even care what the Giants did after that. Jake, you can catch up on everything we just did. Thanks for following me. Continue to follow me on X and Instagram as well. Subscribe to this channel. Please rate, review, leave comments on the channel. It's PL and NFL on YouTube and on Instagram and everywhere else, except on X, on Twitter. P Leonard NYDN is the handle there. I broke the news and the terms of the trade up with the Texans last night. I broke the news of the Giants selecting Jackson, and at 25, they get their quarterback. They get a pass rusher. Stick with me. Stick with Talking Ball with Pat Leonard and at the New York Daily News. Thank you so much. See you guys soon.